Perhaps it's a force of habit. In the trenches, we couldn't even bury the dead. There were too many of them. I've never had the time to discuss them over a glass of champagne. And by them, I mean everyone! Welcome to the Fluffenhammer. Roll the music.
Every man lives, not every man truly dies.
I know we're perfect strangers, and I'm reaching out to you. We got to be together, but I haven't a clue how we beat up. I could need some of you. Straight up, there is nothing else I'd rather do. Sit tight, you may think it's in the rain. We need to get back. We need to get back in the game.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good evening, good night, dear listeners, and hello, you creatures under the sofa. Welcome once more to the Fluffenhammer, and it's another late lunch little conversation type episode. But I am not alone, and no, I'm not alone with a brand new person, for I have somebody else here that also has been on this show for many, many months. Say hello, Andy.
Hello. Late lunch? I mean, you're not wrong.
Well, I've now just got into the habit of calling these little interview episodes after some form of meal. I don't know why I've done it, but now it's too late to stop.
Are you going to use the term linner at some point?
Linner?
Yeah. Lunch and dinner, linner.
No.
Oh, you should. It's a stupid word.
No, it would be a dunch.
Oh, I like that too, dunch. Yeah, everybody loves a dunch.
But we are not alone this evening, for tonight we have a third person, a person that we're going to quest. And of course, now is the perfect time for my phone to start making a noise. Thank you, phone, for interrupting my introduction, you little bastard. I've lost my train of thought now, and Mexican bandits have stolen everything of worth. Hello, Ed.
Hello.
How are
Thank you very
you?
much for having me.
Welcome to the chaos. It's all gone horribly wrong very quickly. Right, okay. Nothing's making noises. Cool. How are you doing this evening, fella?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yes, very well. Thank you for organising this and asking me to come on and chat to you. I've come completely unprepared and unmedia trained, so we'll see how it goes.
That's all right. I mean,
Perfect for the show.
Yeah, I mean, literally, if this show does not go off on a weird tangent where after half an hour we realise we're so far away from the original topic that Thelma and Louise are driving off some form of cliff in front of us, then it's not really a Fluffenhammer episode.
Never seen that
Absolutely.
film. Never seen it.
You've never seen
No,
Thelma
me
and
neither.
Louise?
No.
It's worth watching for an incredibly tiny and young Brad Pitt.
How old's Brad Pitt in that film?
17, 18.
Oh my god, he's a baby. Oh, he's a little baby.
It's really weird because it's Brad Pitt. It's obviously Brad Pitt, but he's like got little chubby cheeks.
Oh.
It's just odd. Very, very odd.
Delightful.
See what I mean? Off topic, straight away, just straight down. Thelma and Louise conversation. The intro today, of course, was taken from two films, as is always the case. It's the guest choice of what we're going to do, and I always mash them together.
That's what you were doing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So they're from The Blue Max and Leon, which are two very, very, very good films, actually.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if The Blue Max was a good film. I feel like I'm the only person that knows about it. No one else I've ever spoken to has ever seen it. So I take it you have seen it, have you?
Yeah. I remember it was on a Sunday on Channel 4 about 2003,
Right.
and I just sat and watched the entire thing. I think I was hungover, and I just lay on the sofa, drinking my Lucasade. I ordered a takeaway, and I just sat and watched the Blue Max.
That's a proper Sunday film, that, if ever there was
Oh
one.
yeah.
It's got the length, it's got the kind of brevity, the randomness. It's got Ursula Andress. It's fantastic.
It's I always feel that I should have watched Catch 22 straight afterwards and just see what happened to my brain.
I think that it's sort of been forgotten. I just feel like it happened and then no one really acknowledged it again. And when you go back and watch it, you think actually they're doing stuff. It's 1966, and there are shots in it that you think that's bloody good. Like
Oh God, yeah.
Christopher Nolan would have liked to have set that up. And there's no real kind of special effects. There's no CGI. There are no model aeroplanes really. Yeah, it's terrific. Really, really good. But it's kind of jarring because it goes from what's obviously quite ambitious, modern inverted commas filmmaking to proper kind of set piece. Might as well be a stage play.
Yeah.
Kind of bits where they're in a studio.
Talking heads shots.
Yeah, but the opening scene that they're in the trenches, and there's this great shot where George Peppard is kind of looking up at the sky, watching these two planes duel, and then one of them gets shot down, and the camera, all in one take, follows it all the way down, and then as it follows it down, obviously the way they did this is they flew the plane behind a hill, but then they set some explosives off at the same time as it goes under the hill. So it looks, it's the illusion of it crashing. But then the camera continues panning down to a line of hundreds of extras who are German soldiers kind of trudging in this fantastic set piece. And it looks like something out of an Otto Dix painting or something. And then the music starts up. And you're like, this is amazing. This is an awesome, awesome shot. So, yeah, that just had me from the very beginning, really. And the concept as well, kind of German perspective as well, which is a really interesting choice. So the whole thing feels like kind of doom and gloom from the beginning because it's kind of late World War One. Oh, God, it's just so good, though. It's all the classic kind of story about class and James Mason's in it. It's a phenomenal film.
Yeah, I would recommend anybody out there who hasn't heard of it to go and watch it because, as Andy did with the Zulu earlier this week, it's one of those films where people just assume you've seen it, I think, and that's why nobody talks about it.
Yeah,
but, it's very much worth a watch.
I don't think in this day and age people assume you've seen Zulu. I think people of our age are probably meant to assume you've seen Zulu. I don't think like young kids would have seen it. Well, not young kids, but I don't think a 20-year-old's seen it.
No, I mean, I suppose that's the problem, isn't it? The idea of the Sunday afternoon film doesn't really exist anymore, does it?
Well, it's not just a Sunday afternoon film. I think I first saw that it got wheeled into a history classroom on a giant TV and a VHS set, and it was like, right, we're not doing any work today. We're going to watch this. I remember seeing All Quiet on the Western Front, the 70s one, the one with Frodo in it. Not Frodo, Bilbo. Guy in Aliens. Alien even. What's his name?
No. I'm sticking with the original answer here. I want this like pre-birth Elijah Wood to be playing like a
not
British officer.
oh gosh, I'm so bad with names. What's his name?
Ian Holm.
Ian Holm. Thank you. I also saw Waterloo on the wheeled in TV VHS set in the history classroom. All Quiet on the Western Front. The one about Cromwell. That's a great film.
Wow.
Have you seen Cromwell?
Yeah.
No.
Oh,
Good God.
That's great.
Actually, they didn't make us watch a lot of films in school, at least in mine. We only watched To Kill a Mockingbird once and the Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio. Those are the only two movies I remember watching in school.
That's pretty good on your teachers to not kind of go for the easy. I must have shown The Muppets Christmas Carol to thousands of school children over the years.
Oh, you did them a service? They should thank you.
Life enhancing, yeah.
Out of interest, did either of you guys have to watch that weird BBC 70s Romeo and Juliet?
No.
The cartoon?
No, the live action
cartoon
one.
Romeo and Juliet.
There were a load of BBC. Were they BBC? Let's say they were BBC. There were a load of shorts, Shakespeare animated.
Huh.
And they're all kind of 10, 15 minutes long. The Macbeth is really good, actually. But yeah,
I want to say they're actually IT ITC.
Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe they weren't BBC.
No, the BBC did one, and what came out about 3-4 years ago is that both of the actors were underage for the full frontal sex scenes. So they're in that.
Oh no!
Oh yeah.
No.
Oh, it's not good. But I remember at the time, just like the entire classroom, just like getting very uncomfortable and shifting
Yeah.
around, just like, sir.
Sir, help!
Sir, I've just seen Romeo's penis, sir. And
God.
Juliet's looking very 70s, and I'm 13, sir. This is no, no.
The teacher was probably buried in their crossword, uninterested.
Well, if I remember rightly, the teacher we had was actually Mrs. Chicken, who was brilliantly having an affair with a guy called Mr. Butcher. So,
oh my god! There wasn't someone called Mrs. Chicken, was there?
Yep, she was the English and drama teacher, and she had an affair with the head of science, who was called Mr. Butcher.
They don't sound like real names. They sound like joke characters from a children's book.
On a completely side note, though, have I ever explained my hatred of Romeo and Juliet to you, Andy?
No, not to me. No.
No, right. So I hate Romeo and Juliet. Right?
Oh yeah, same.
I hate it with a fiery, fiery passion, and it's for the following reason. I did Romeo and Juliet for the year before starting GCSEs, right?
I see where this is going. Yeah.
I was then bumped up to the top set of English for the GCSEs.
Oh wow!
Right? So I was from set 3 to set 1. Guess what we did for 2 years? Romeo and Juliet, right? I then went off to college to do my A-levels, English literature and language. Guess what we did in English literature, Andy?
Oh no!
Ed? Did Romeo and Juliet?
No.
Guess what we did in English language?
How many years have you
Why were you
spent
doing it in
on
English
Romeo?
language?
Because part of the module was to do Shakespeare's language. Now language changes over the years, and so the one freaking example they decided to pull out was Romeo and fucking Juliet.
So how many years have you spent?
5 years.
Like 5 years on Romeo and Juliet. You could have done a dissertation, like a full-on doctorate.
I could have done, but by that point I was so...
Take it all the way.
Yeah, why not? Professor Gruff of Romeo and Juliet studies.
Yeah, there's a reason I didn't go straight into university, and that's because I was scared that I was going to have to get another 4 years of Romeo and Juliet. Honestly, it's taken me until maybe 3-4 years ago to actually be able to acknowledge the idea of watching the Leonardo DiCaprio version ever again.
Are you worried, like, your kid is going to go to school and have to do Romeo and Juliet, and you're going to have to help him with it?
I'll just scream. And I'll never stop.
I promise if I die before you, at your funeral, we'll play the Romeo and Juliet movie.
I've told everyone what I want played at my funeral is The Wizard of Oz, Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. So,
Oh, I could bring a rubber arm as a stick as well for the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie.
perfect. At my funeral, I demand that we just watch the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie.
Everyone must watch. Everyone has to wave your coffin off with the rubber hand as well.
Thanks. Right, Ed.
Hello.
Welcome to the Fluffenhammer.
It's a very warm and irreverent welcome. Thank you.
So, basically, Ed has been doing a load of absolutely incredible work over on the YouTubes, ranging from the first video I saw of yours was the painting for Old Hammer Orks, which is a while back now, actually, probably about a year, I want to say.
Yeah, so that I did 2 about a year ago. And then I kind of stopped because it was a real effort and I wasn't happy with what I was doing. And then in April this year, I sort of logged back into YouTube and I'd seen that quite a lot of people had subscribed, and a few comments said, "Oh, it's a shame that this is gone." And I had a few messages, and a load of people had subscribed because I think there'd been a bit of a kind of renaissance in the kind of era of second edition 40k stuff that I've been doing. There'd been a kind of resurgence of interest, and I had I'd stopped doing those videos because I only did 2 for a number of reasons. Sort of foremost of them being time and just not being happy with what I was putting out. But I reflected on all of that and sort of thought, well, what if I just did an update on what I've done so far, and it's 2 minutes, and I won't shoot it with the SLR, and I won't be too fussy about the editing and all that kind of thing. I'll just shoot it on my phone. It won't take very long. I just come back from India, and I don't know if you get this when you come back from holiday, but suddenly you're kind of awash with creative energy. And I'd also got COVID, so I had a week off work. And during that time, I was kind of well enough in a sort of slightly feverish fugue to produce 2 videos that were quite well received. And also I thought, this is amazing. And it took me the best part of kind of a week to make each of those videos.
Yeah.
And it took me forever to edit them because I was kind of learning how to use Premiere Pro. I was learning how to do so. I was just learning production. And I'm a real perfectionist. And I just wasn't happy with all of these things. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was a teacher at the time. So you have the summer holidays, you have 8-10 weeks off. And you think to yourself, oh, I can get all this stuff done. But actually not having those time constraints was really unhelpful to me, I think. So, so I went from that to kind of knocking out a video a week for sort of the next 8 weeks, which surprised me. And I was actually ironically happier with the quality and consistency of what and the style of what I was producing rather than having all that time. So yeah, and it snowballed a bit. Well, it hasn't snowballed a lot, but it snowballed a bit. We're kind of on. I think we're on about 4,500 subscribers at the moment.
Nice.
Which is cool. There's obviously a bit of a following. I think the big thing is that I found my voice and I found a niche, which is quite fun. Like, I've also discovered the fact that YouTube is quite nice. That's just a really naive thing for me to say, but Instagram is fine. Like, but I think you don't get much sense of a community on Instagram, really.
No. I know what you're saying.
Like, there are faces, there are people that you know, and I have kind of linked out to people on Instagram in the past, but it's not a platform that really creates this sense of belonging. I think everyone's kind of just sort of chasing likes and things like that, or promoting their stuff, which is it serves a purpose.
It's a place that's really good for momentum, but not very good for the bedrock. If that makes sense. Yeah, if you get a lot of likes and everything on Instagram, you can kind of funnel that into something else, but you can't really do much with it on Instagram itself. Yeah,
and also I think the problem is there's all the stuff around algorithms and the consistency, and it rewards you for being consistent and all that sort of stuff, which is, I don't think it leads to particularly healthy behaviors and all that kind of thing. So it's not. It just didn't really kind of chime with me. It didn't really resonate with me. But before, I mean, initially I sort of gave up the YouTube stuff. Like I said, I did 2 videos and thought, actually, it's much more rewarding just to kind of do my hobby, paint my second edition box set in my own time, and then a month or 2 later, when it's done in my own time, I'll just take a picture of it and put it on Instagram.
Yeah,
and that's fine. and people will respond, and that'll be that. But I realised very early on through this sort of second wave of doing the YouTube stuff that there's a really amazing community out there. They unlike Instagram, they're not following 1,000 people and there's a feed of stuff. They might just be following you and a handful of other content makers, which is really cool. And you feel like that they're sort of patrons already, and there are people who are engaging with it, and it's speaking to them on a certain level, and they're your kind of people. And then immediately, people want to break through that kind of weird anonymous internet wall, and you start making internet friends, and you start appearing on podcasts, and you start inviting people over for the weekend to play games of a second edition 40k, and someone else reached out to me the other day. I was like, he said, "Is that the?" Because in one of the videos, I posted a model to New Zealand, and my wife walked into the post office. I filmed her going into the post office, and this guy reached out on Instagram. Was like, "Is that the East Street Post Office in Bristol by any chance?" Yes. He said, "I live just down the road from you." And I went over to this guy's house for a few beers and a game of 40k on Tuesday, and he's got the most extraordinary collection of
That's
Warhammer. It is
amazing.
crazy. Yeah, so cool. So
Brilliant.
it's really cool, and it's really exciting, and and obviously, don't worry, guys, I'll be careful, but like, it's really nice to kind of get in touch with people and build, like, through this very kind of manufactured, artificial medium platform, but do something really creative, really human that speaks to people, and form these new relationships with people, and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
break through something which before was actually something really solitary, which is one guy, building and painting his box of toy soldiers, which he had since 1993.
There's two things that pop into mind here. One is that earlier on today, one of the guys on the Fluffenhammer Facebook, he dropped a line into a conversation, and it was it's just a throwaway thing he said, but it's been playing in my head all day, and it was that the playing is only how did he word it? The hobby is more than just the game. And it's been playing in my mind all day, because there's something there which I feel could be quite important and could be worked with to look at the greater umbrella of what this hobby is. And it just, you saying that, it's just popped back into my head again, that I think there's something there, and I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I think there's something in that line, something in that sentence, which is incredibly important, that it could be worth looking into. The other thing was,
I remember. Oh, sorry. Say the other thing, because otherwise it'll disappear into the ether.
I was going to say was the reason I saw your Orks video is Kirioth shared it out on Twitter a long time ago now. I think it was Kirioth anyhow, and it was just based on lines of, well, I wish that these orcs were my orcs. It was like, so I'd look at it,
Cool.
and then
Kirioth is somebody out there, isn't? Is Kirioth someone's?
Oh yeah,
someone big on the.
Yeah, he's big on the YouTubes and the Twitters and stuff. He's a really nice guy. We had him on 3 years ago.
God,
oh cool.
Was it really that long ago?
It would have been, yeah.
Oh my god!
Because I've tried to get him in for the last 2 Fluffy Award shows. But it's never been able to match up.
I listened. I think that was one of the first shows I listened to of your podcast.
The Fluffies.
Yeah,
wow.
Which is a hell of an entry point.
Oh god, yeah. Trial by fire, like, absolutely.
It was really entertaining. It was really good.
Yeah. Was it the one that had the narrative about the flies, or was it the one that had the weird love story that went through the answers?
Oh yeah, those went over my head. It was the most recent one, I think.
Yeah, this year. I don't think there was anything massive. Whoever does these, because all the answers we get are anonymous, and I want to keep it that way. I don't want anybody to leave their name anywhere. So they've been made so anybody who answers, they answer anonymously. But there is somebody or a group of people, I don't know which it is, who every year they forge a narrative into the answers that they write. And it's a work of art. It is an absolute work of genius. And whoever that person is, they deserve some form of trophy, because honestly, how it's done is so. I think at this point we kind of wait to see what the answers are going to be for the first thing, to try and work out where they're going to end up going. And I don't think any of us can ever work it out. They're just so well done and so absolutely weird.
The Flies ones was my favorite. I like that one the best. I love the Flies one.
The Flies one was. It was something else. It was by the end of it, it was a full like Nurgle apocalypse, and you just, how are you doing this
with answers?
With answers,
with answers, and they were still sort of on topic. Some of them as well, which is weird.
Yeah, just genius, absolute genius. What was I saying? Oh yeah, right. So that's how I'd seen the Orks one, and then Andy actually introduced me to the latest stuff that you've been doing, and I was watching them, and it's like something sounds familiar, and I realised when I went onto your channel that it had been the Orks one that I'd watched maybe 8-9 months earlier, and it was just, well, that's a really weird piece of coincidence all coming together.
Oh, cool. Did you notice? Did you notice a sort of shift in? Did you notice anything different in the channel at all? Like watching more recent ones.
Yeah, there's the one I watched. Which was the one Andy showed me? I want to say it was the Tyranids one, because me and Andy share an insane, unhealthy love for second-hand Tyranids.
Cool.
And going, sort of realizing that they were from the same channel and everything, the level of comfortable that you had in that Tyranids one far outstrips what you had in the Orks one. The Orks one, yeah, I wouldn't say that it was uncomfortable. I wouldn't say that it was there's any issues or anything like that.
It was uncomfortable viewing.
Yeah, it was really weird. It made me question my body. I don't understand how that happened. I mean, I could obviously tell whilst doing the narration for the second one, you were naked the entire time. I could just completely tell. Yeah, and that's now how I record all my shows. It's freeing. It's like how you can hear somebody smile.
I think it comes down to those to the constraints again. Before I had all the time in the world, but not much of an idea of how to use. I mean, I still have a limited knowledge of sound design and how to record and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But every video I make, I take forward something that I've learned or something that I've picked up from the previous one. And so I'll always progress in a certain direction. I might take a step back in other directions, but the only real way is to learn by doing. Whereas with the Ork and the first one, what I was doing is I was staying exactly where I was, but just kind of and then redoing and then you lose the soul and the kind of fluidity and anything kind of natural and fun about it, which is what YouTube's really all about. I think YouTube is supposed to be, that's how people form an attachment to these videos. And those personalities, because they are putting part of themselves into each video rather than it being a performance or a kind of an essay. Like it's really freeing because initially what it was, it was the time constraints initially that freed me up. But now it's knowing that that's how to do it. Like, you're just gonna edit this video today, and as much as you might want to trawl the internet for that particular sound effect or that particular whatever, you haven't got time to do that, so you're not going to do that. So just cut that out. Who cares? Get on with it. And that's really helpful. That's really good for me, and actually just a great lesson for me, I think, creatively.
It's probably why I've been filling the Discord soundboard with just clips of Andy saying different things.
How many have you got now?
I have already got the same amount that we had earlier on. I haven't uploaded any other ones, but I still have this one.
Why?
So I wanted to ask you guys, did you see Garth Marenghi live at all?
No, I missed it.
So I think I saw his last performance. Well, certainly the last performance in Bristol. That was an experience. I didn't know much about Garth Marenghi until about a year ago, and I had it recommended to me by the guy that we were talking earlier about, Transmetropolitan. I had it recommended, the same guy that handed me those comic books, but also recommended that I go and watch Jam. That he also talked to me about Garth Marenghi. So he was obviously keyed in to something there, to the darkness. And I've since I was working nights, and then I watched all of Garth Marenghi. It's not very much.
Nope, 6 episodes.
Watched all the Dark Place, and the guy that I went and watched the performance with then gave me the novel. And have you read that?
I have. Bloody hell.
It's really hard work, isn't it?
It is.
Almost like 3 pages and then go to bed, and then the next day another 3 pages and then go to bed. I mean, it's quite fun, but it's hard work. It suffers from the same problem as the live show,
Mhm.
which is also like the greatest compliment that I could pay it, is that it's too
it's
genuine.
Yeah,
it's too genuine. Like the live performance was exactly as Garth Marenghi would have it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what made it like not brilliant.
Yeah, no, I'm with you completely. It's the parody is so on point that it's very, very hard to see the joke at times. Whilst I think Dark Place, because the parody was often so visual, it was very easy to see the joke. Whilst the novel, I totally agree with you. The novel is so on point that at times it is real fucking hard to get through. That honestly, once it was just this constant repeating of the typewriter sex, I was really again, which is completely on point. It's very much what the it's trying to do. It's hitting that Dean Koontz repetition, but honestly, it's like I don't think I can go through another lurid description of the weird sex with the typewriter.
I then went and played Alan. Oh God, not
Alan
Alan
Wake?
Moore. Alan Wake. I then went and played Alan Wake, and because I'd been reading Garth Marenghi, and then I was playing Alan Wake, which is very derivative of Stephen King and all the others as well. I just couldn't take it seriously. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's quite hard to take Alan Wake seriously anyway. But
yeah, well, when the tagline is
time.
The tagline is "I am a wake." Yeah, that's.
He's getting a sequel, isn't it, Alan Wake? I think there's a second one.
Yeah. It's all coming together. It all got announced, and there's a trailer. Yeah, it looks cool.
Oh, I hope that we meet his brother Boris Sleep.
Isn't that like his evil fake dad or something?
Maybe it's the evil twin from another mirror dimension. It's exactly the same one. He's got a goatee.
Oh my god!
Did Alan Wake have a goatee? No, he was clean shaven.
No, it was a bit scraggly, I think. But not too bad. Yeah.
Maybe it should be like this weird crossover between Alan Wake and Alone in the Dark, where Alan Wake falls into the Alone in the Dark universe and just dies very, very quickly. Because they're very different things. But or it works across my idea for a Silent Hill game, which is you sit in the car and starve to death. Because
I mean, I'd rather that than
I ain't going
Silent Hill myself.
I ain't going out there. I'm going to sit in the car and wait to die. That's my plan. So
I didn't go out there to such an extent that I think I played about 5 minutes of the demo that came with PlayStation Magazine, and then I was out, and that was it. And now I only, anytime anyone talks about Silent Hill, I kind of nod my head and smile and think, yeah, I don't know what that was about, other than a torch and terror.
That's going to remake as well, so you'll be able to. I mean, if you wanted to, you could have a go of that in the future. I plan to, because I've never played a Silent Hill game because it looked pretty wonky, for back in the day. This will not. A remake shouldn't theoretically play as wonky, so it should be interesting.
One of the things that was so scary about Resident Evil and Silent Hill was that you barely were able to control your character.
Oh yeah. Definitely. That was half the fear.
Turn at a snail's pace, and you have to press X and forward at the same time to make them go, and they can't really go backwards. It's that was the thing that was scary. It's not even control of your limbs.
Nothing got your heart racing, I think, more than those bloody dogs bursting through that window the first time.
Oh god, yeah.
That freaked me out so bad.
On a completely different note that's still connected, have either of you guys read the Resident Evil novelizations?
I've seen the CGI movies. Does that count?
No. There were novelizations for the games that came out side by side.
Are they good? I'd imagine no, but
are
they as good as the live action? The CGI movies or the live action movies?
Well, I enjoyed them more than the live action movies.
Okay, all right.
The first live action movie had nothing to do with the franchise, really, did it?
No,
it had zombies. No. It had the T-virus in there, and there was a mansion.
Was there a mansion? I just remember there being a lab.
Yeah, the mansion was on top of the lab. It was where the lab was wearing the mansion as a hat, basically.
And what was the name of the actress?
Or the character was Alice. The actress she's married to the director, to Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah.
Mila Jovovich.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gets awards out for every film for that
yeah.
Resident Evil franchise for some reason.
Yeah,
I guess her husband was just trying to show her off, I guess.
Well, she's turned up in every one of his films since they got married. So
Yeah.
including that weird Steampunk Three Musketeers movie, which I bet
Yeah.
you nobody remembers that came out.
My friend Chris went to see it. I think he enjoyed it. I always tried to bully him into making me watch it when I went round to his, but he never had it when I went round. Which was kind of sad. I wanted to see it because it looked terrible. I thought I could get a good laugh out of it.
It is fairly terrible. Well, it's W.S. Anderson who.
He's done one movie. Two.
He's made two. Yeah, he's made two good films by accident.
Yeah.
Which was, of course, the original Mortal Kombat film and Event Horizon.
Well, I'd argue Mortal Kombat wasn't good, but I really liked it. I'd say that Event Horizon's pretty good.
Yeah. I think that's more to do with the script than anything else.
Yeah.
Phil Eisner.
I do like Mortal Kombat. That's a stupid film.
Ed, how do you feel about the Mortal Kombat movie?
I know that I've seen it. I can't remember it. I keep wanting to replace it with the Street Fighter film that I remember more.
That's pretty fun as well. That's a pretty fun movie. Not good, but fun.
W.S. Anderson. I'm just looking at his IMDb page because I'm pretty sure he must have done a film that I do like.
Ooh.
Okay, so I do like Event Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
I had like a group therapy night that I remember very well, where my two housemates, who were my best friends as well, we all stayed up one night and then discovered that we were all terrified of Event Horizon, so agreed to watch it together, which I think did me a world of good. I know this is all really crap.
Oh yeah,
I mean, this is so bad. I think it's like his average IMDb score is probably like 5.2 or something.
Yeah,
that's pretty generous. I would say
he did
for film.
Oh no, he didn't direct it. He did the screen story and screenplay for Alien vs Predator.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that there's not. But he's married to Mila Jovovich, who she's in Fifth Element, isn't she?
Yeah. She is, yeah.
The new Multipass,
which is a great film.
Yeah. Wait.
And also, no, I won't hear it. It's a great film, and it's also directed by Luc Besson, who directed Leon, which was one of my second favorite film.
And Luc Besson also went off to do Delicatessen and City of Children, which are both incredible films. Super French, but you know.
That's how I would describe Fifth Element. Fifth Element, very French.
Oh man, Delicatessen is
very French.
It shits all over the Fifth Element for sheer Frenchness.
Wow, really? Oh my god.
Oh, it's yeah. You don't watch Delicatessen. You try your best to keep up with it as it comes at you.
It's weird when you see those films because you know they're not innately bad. They're just very culturally different from what you're used to, and I think that's interesting. It's like watching a Japanese movie. You go, yeah, this is really different from the usual stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. And love Delicatessen. Anyhow, I don't even know how we got here. I'm going to be completely honest. Normally, I'm quite good at keeping hold of where we are up the ladder, but this time round, the ladder's fallen over. Don't know where we're at. So brilliant. So. However we got here, we can all agree that Luc Besson is brilliant. Yep. Right, go.
Well, yes.
What?
What was that sci-fi film he did recently?
No,
it wasn't recently. It was a long time ago.
The robots one.
Yeah, because I think The Fifth Element was kind of the film. The film that I'm trying to remember was the film he wanted Fifth Element to be. He had this story that he was obsessed with and always wanted to turn to film. And then when he eventually did it, I thought, this is going to be amazing. And it was quite disappointing. Maybe he didn't direct it. Maybe he was just... Oh, no, Valerian.
Oh, no, that was bad.
Yeah. Because that for him, I think, was like a lifelong dream to do.
Yeah,
and I was thinking, come on, Luc Besson, you're gonna, surely this is going to be great. I also remember secretly, this is terrible thing, secretly hoping that the French would win the bid for the Olympics. Because Luc Besson would be directing the video that promoted the event.
That would be worth seeing.
Yeah. But that didn't come to pass.
Yeah, we get the Queen in Paddington. He just gets like, I don't know, Mila Jovovich shot out of a cannon naked into a big bowl of jelly or something. Which is the word French just spins in the middle of the screen,
Oh, he did the John Carter film as well. Oh, no, he didn't. Sorry, I'm just looking at Also Like This, because that's nothing like it at all.
I was going to say, no, did he? I mean, that's a very American film. Very American. Also, much better than anyone gave it credit for.
Definitely.
Right, let's get back into some Warhammer, because as much as I will gladly allow this conversation to hit Alien Resurrection at some point, just so we can have a whole big conversation why Alien Resurrection is a great, terrible film, and why Alien 3 is the best that franchise ever got. Personally,
I saw Aliens in the cinema recently, actually, and that is a hell of a film.
Yeah, it's great.
It is amazing how when you watch something in the cinema, you appreciate it so much more.
Yeah,
like the last kind of the sort of last 20 minutes of the film, I never really appreciated watching it on the small screen, that it's all in real time. She literally has 20 minutes to get in there and get Newt out before the reactor goes. My God, it was tense in the cinema. So cool.
Yeah.
What a film.
I remember doing the first 4 Alien films back to back in a cinema special thing. So you're in all day, basically, I think it was from 5 o'clock till midnight, something like that. And it was great. And what was really cool was by the time we got to Resurrection, people started having naps, and it was. And I was just thinking to myself afterwards, like, oh man, if they'd put the 2 Alien versus Predator films, I think people would have just brought quilts and stuff. It's like, I've seen all the films I need to see now. Good night.
I think they probably would have left, to be honest.
Yeah, guaranteed. I agree. They wouldn't have stayed. No way.
Freaking anti-movies that those films are.
Anyway, Warhammer.
Yeah, one thing I was going to ask you, mate, because honestly, I could just sit here and talk about films all night. It's just one of those things. One thing I really want to know is, because you're doing a lot of second ed to 40k, which I will say, best Tyranids. Yeah, best era for the Tyranids.
Yeah.
Best codexes. Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
And that's purely because they didn't have as much lore to solidify, so a lot of it was quite open-ended, and it allowed the reader to create their own stuff out of it.
Yes. And it was also weirdly kind of. I always felt like the Ultramarine Codex and Codex Tyranids was sort of intertwined, because the destiny of not the destiny, but certainly the destiny of the Ultramarines was intertwined with the Tyranids. You'd read all about the Battle of Macragge in the Tyranid Codex, and there are all the names of the characters and talking about the Third Company and what happened to the First Company, and then 250 years later what happened to Icar 4 and all this kind of stuff. You realise that, oh wow, they're really kind of, their fates are intertwined. This is really important for the Ultramarines. And you'd forget sometimes, years later, I always thought that great big blurb about Hive Fleet Behemoth was in the Ultramarines Codex, and it's not. It's in the Tyranids Codex, and that's great. But in terms of weight and in terms of rules writing and things, definitely not. But it is so lovely how open it all is. That, you say, it hasn't all been codified, and it's just it's far more of a sandbox, I think. And it's a sandbox in terms of the universe in a lore and background level, but it's also a sandbox on the tabletop as well. 10th edition is really good. I've had a game a week since it's come out, and I really enjoy it. But you can't quite let go of the the competitive, I want to win, I'm playing a game thing.
Mhm.
As much as you're a grown up and you're there to have fun and roll dice, the game sort of the way it's designed sort of steers you into that. You're so invested in all the dice rolls and all the rules and things. Mistakes hurt. It's annoying when you get something wrong because it costs you and all that kind of thing. Whereas with second edition, it's just a sandbox.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter. Like you're sort of winding up the toys almost, and then letting them go free, and then what happens, and I never care about the result, but there's always a good story to tell.
Yeah.
I couldn't really tell you about a definitively cool moment in the last 6 games of 10th edition that I've played. Like, I've had fun, I've had a good time. It's a good game. I've enjoyed myself.
Mhm.
But if we were to, I could talk about like with good memories and have a laugh with you about all of the second edition games that I've had that are in my head, because something ridiculous and hilarious and narrative and potentially like, law making happened in those games. Like
Absolutely.
one recently where I was playing a Gene Stealer cult list of my sort of current edition, but I was running the second ed rules against Orks. And in the first turn, the Orks, that one of their buggies fired a plasma cannon at my Gene Stealers, which I'd cast Catalyst on that makes them virtually invulnerable. And so my opponent was sweating. He's like, this is terrifying. I'm going to put my big guns into them. It scattered. He'd missed, this Ork boy missed so spectacularly that it scattered onto my Patriarch. My Patriarch failed his save. The Patriarch has 4 wounds. He rolled a D4 on the damage. He killed my Patriarch.
Oh no!
And in second edition, it has far-reaching consequences. Like the entire Gene Stealer cult army basically goes catatonic, and they're either frenzied or basically just rout. And my massive blob of neophytes with like heavy weapons, they just disappeared off the board immediately. Everything just fell apart. Some hybrids frenzied. It was just, the moment, if that happened in 10th edition, you'd be up in arms. You'd be knocking on the door of GWHQ. People would be absolutely livid. But in second edition, you're like, no, that's what happens. That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
And it's the 2 big reasons for that is, one, they had scatter dice, which are God's own dice. Scatter dice are something that ever since I got back into the hobby, I cannot believe don't exist anymore. Because I came back in with the beginning of Age of Sigmar, purely because Fancy Battle had died, and I couldn't believe they'd killed it. I couldn't get my head around it at all. And well, it wasn't even called Fancy Battle at that point, was it? It was the End Times. And I couldn't believe it. So I was looking into it. I was looking up the Age of Sigmar stuff. And all I could think of was, this is the most prog rock stuff I've seen in years. And I'm in. And that's what got me with Age of Sigmar. And now I've stuck with it. And it's such a great setting that I love it. I just love it to bits. But the fact that there's no scatter dice in any of the systems, I feel, is a remarkable oversight, and people should be hung for it, because scatter dice are what God himself created to play on the table. But I think, in a more serious note, the difference is that second ed wasn't a true war game. It was a mass combat RPG game. That's what it was set out to be, and that's what it's there to do. It's not to play tournaments with; it's to tell stories with. Because it pulled over from Rogue Trader, which Rogue Trader actually you had to have a games master, which is you just consider that, and it's like, what?
Yeah, I bet second edition requires a games master as well, but it's just 2 players that are pretty cool with it.
Yeah, true.
And enter into the spirit of it. You're right. It's a funny bridge between Rogue Trader and third edition.
So would you guys recommend then that if you're a narrative gamer versus a competitive gamer, you probably will have more fun with second edition rules? Is that the idea?
If you can get your head around it, yes.
Yeah.
Is there a more simplified? Because I'm pretty sure I remember second edition being a little bit convoluted in places for certain things. Are there more modern rules out there?
Xenos Rampant?
That simplify it?
So you can So there's a PDF of second edition called the Battle Bible. So you can basically read all the rules up to date, all the codices, all the stats, all the war gear, all that stuff. So if you type Battle Bible second edition 40k, like it's a free PDF to download, and you can get everything on there. So that's quite a good one to look at. None of the lore and none of the background stuff is in there. But if you were looking just to kind of have a look at the rules, then certainly. One of the things that's so cool about it is that even though the system was around for quite a long time, I think it was 5 years at least. I think there's still only a handful of missions. There's only a deck of stratagems, psychic powers. There wasn't kind of this rules bloat. It didn't disappear or go away because of rules bloat. I think more players were newer to 40k, like in the last 6-7 years. I think you sort of assume that an edition comes out, it's all exciting, and then it grows and grows and grows, and then it collapses under its own weight, and then a new one rises out of the ashes like a phoenix to save everyone. Oh, thank God, GW, you've done it again. Thank you. Whereas it wasn't always like that. It used to be you wouldn't even get models for some of the stuff in the codices.
Nope.
And in the Ultramarines Codex, there's a Space Marine captain who's the captain of the first company called Invictus. And the great thing is he's dead. Like you read through the background at the beginning of the Ultramarines Codex, he's already dead, but he's in the Codex. That's brilliant. That it's not kind of fixed in time. It's just a kind of setting.
Yeah, it's fun because you can kind of do a narrative campaign with him on his life, I suppose, can't you? And then whenever he dies, you can just go, that's the end of his story. That's where he died.
Yeah,
right. That's a great idea for a story, a narrative gameplay at least.
So
how does one-page rules stand up to second ed rules, would you say? Because I know that some people in today's generation are like, if you want to play 40k but you don't want to go through all the guff, one-page rules is the way to go. How does that compare to second edition, if anybody knows? Because I've no idea.
One-page rules is really good for just getting stuff on the table and rolling dice. I don't want to. The problem is, no matter how I come at this, it's going to sound like I'm having a go at it, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form. It is. Opinion. Yeah, it's free, and it's a really good system. It has no weight to it, as far as I'm concerned, and that I think comes from the fact that it is built to be quick, easy, beer and pretzels rolling dice. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
So it's more like. Would you say it's more like again, I'm not meant to sound derogative, but like baby's first RPG, a strategy game. So you can learn how a tabletop game kind of works, and then you can kind of move into a more complex system if you wanted to.
Yeah,
what you're getting at?
Pretty much. I mean, if you wanted to go for a more modern take on something like Second Ed, then I would say Xenos Rampant. Rampant's a really good system, and if you wanted to go smaller scale than that, Stargrave's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm really curious about Stargrave, actually. I've watched quite a lot of... have you guys watched MS Paints at all?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Dave does loads of terrain for Stargrave, and he's obviously quite into it, and it just looks very intriguing, and a lot of those plastics that they release as well do look fantastic.
Yeah.
So I thought the whole thing... He did a video on just buying up a lot of these plastic toys for cheap and turning them into Stargrave terrain and vehicles and things. I thought that was very cool.
Have you guys ever seen Bill making stuff?
What's he do?
Yeah, he makes stuff.
What's his name?
Bill.
No, I haven't heard of him.
Yeah, he's got a twin brother called Phil who also builds stuff, which is a really weird experience. Because
what's his YouTube channel called?
Bill building stuff. I'm not kidding.
Phil watching Bill making things.
So what Bill making stuff is, he does loads of stuff for like Stargrave and Planet 28. But he'll do stuff like he'll make robots out of beads, or he'll make like really cool looking like tanks and things out of just like children's toys and bits lying around. The guy's got an amazing brain for doing this stuff. It's incredible to watch. His brother does like sheds and things like that. So it is really weird because they're like, I don't know if they're identical or not, but they look so similar. And it took me a while to work out that they weren't the same person.
They've just got the right gene seed. That's all it is.
Yeah, the Bill Primaris.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I always recommend Bill making stuff because he's a really fun guy to watch. He's really like self-deprecating and very, very funny, and he has a cat made of sporks. So
Not a real cat, just like a right.
it's a
Because that could be quite horrific.
Oh well, I mean everything the cat says is quite horrific. But
Oh my god,
we won't go into that here. There is something actually about your YouTube channel that I wanted to point a finger at. By the way.
Oh my god.
So
gosh.
way back in the mists of time, back during the heady days of Second Ed 40k, you may remember that 40k came out, and then it had a supplemental called Dark Millennium. Yeah, right, which had all the tank stuff and everything in it. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of my friends came up with the idea of, well, wouldn't it be really cool to do just like tanks, like an army of tanks just hunting each other through a city?
Oh yeah, that would be cool.
Right, Second Ed rules, just tanks, right? That's it. So we did that a couple of times, and that was a hell of a lot of fun. We then, because the Wargaming Club I went to, there was a guy, Jeff, who he made tanks for people out of just like cardboard and the plastic board. I can't remember what it's called now. But he would just like make tanks for people. And you just turn up, it's like, oh, I got you those tanks that you wanted. Excellent. How much do I owe you? Tenner. Excellent. I will take these 5 tanks and I'll just start playing with them. Brilliant. Once they were painted, you couldn't tell that they weren't proper Games Workshop stuff. So we did that for a while.
Wow.
And then we kind of hit upon this idea of, well, wouldn't it be really good to just start having nothing but dreadnoughts? Just dreadnoughts fighting each other through the cities. And that, surprisingly, didn't work. Should we just say that certain dreadnought class miniatures would ruin other certain dreadnought class miniatures very quickly.
The Carnifex.
It was the fucking Carnifex. Yeah,
I could hardly guess. That was so lucky on my part. I never would have guessed the Carnifex was an absolute monster in Second Ed.
But the Carnifex has a weakness, I've discovered.
Does. Yep.
And they're called Hellfire rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a war gear card. Any heavy bolter can just fire Hellfire rounds.
Yep.
So any heavy bolter has access to this mutagen, which just will wound a toughness 7, toughness 6 Tyrannid on a 2+, doing, I'm not sure, but a reasonable amount of damage.
Yeah.
So that's how you take down Tyranids. But the cool thing is if this was, and thank God it's not, but if it was a tournament game, there'd be no way of bringing something to the table that you would know would beat face and would wreck all comers.
Yeah.
Because there's a hard counter for everything.
Yeah.
And I do think that's not by design. I think that's an accident. And just to go back to something we said about, there's a sort of, I think there's been a sort of implicit feeling in this conversation that second edition is complicated, it's crunchy, it's slow. And I would say that 50% of that is true-ish, but the other 50% of that is because maybe we were very young and trying to get our heads around things. The rules are not written in a way that's easily interpreted. 50%, and this is the same with all GW rules writing in that era, that 50% of the rules are contained within the fluff, as well as the rules bit as well. And you need to go and ask someone. I mean, and also the other day I had a similar kind of problem. I was like, am I just being stupid or do I not understand that? And I just went into a Facebook group and I asked the question, and 5 minutes later someone explained it to me. That's how you do it. And we didn't have access to these kind of things. So maybe we just thought it was slow because it would just turn into an enormous debate and then the bell would ring for, period 4, and that would be that.
Yeah.
Right. And the house ruling as well, that again, if you play 40k now, I understand either of you guys aware of the Crown of Command podcast?
Yep. Yep.
The guy Carnifex on that, he is a kind of proponent of a rule set, which I don't think even exists in writing. I think it's just word of mouth.
Yeah.
And it's the Don't Be a Dick rule set for second edition. And the way they play it is that you can only have a maximum of 50 points of war gear per army.
Yeah.
Which is nothing.
Yeah.
By the way.
Don't like that.
Yeah, I think that's quite a bit severe. It's a bit severe, but it doesn't cancel anything out. You can't take vortex grenades. The virus card is obviously torn up and thrown in the bin. I do actually think that one of the rules designers themselves, in like the White Dwarf that followed the release of the second edition box set, advised everyone to do exactly the same thing. It's like, by the way, don't use that card. It was a joke. And we
learned our lesson.
Yeah. So what else is that? You can't take any characters over 3 wounds or over 2 or 3 wounds. You don't take characters over a certain mastery level. I think the only exception is the Hive Tyrant. So it really kind of like it really patches it in a fairly prescriptive way, but I think in a way which would make playing tournaments like manageable and make it make sense.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah,
because I'm sure that like you can look at these rules and, like you say, update them. There's no reason why you couldn't like tweak these rules and make them work rather than just going, they're like you say, the crap and just bin them.
Yeah,
that seems like a waste. Everything can
it makes no sense that a Power Fist can wreck a tank. But only
it's cool though for narrative. That's why
only do 1 wound against a Carnifex. And I think the reason why that is because actually it's interesting. Like most weapons do very little damage, which is cool. Like because there's not that sort of crazy wound creep. But as soon as something with mega wounds comes along, like a Carnifex, it sort of breaks. I think the way the designers thought about it, they were like, well, we don't want people to auto take a Power Fist to take out characters. So what we'll do is we'll make it like a sort of encumbrant piece of equipment, so it's not easy to wield around. That it will actually damage your weapon skill, or it'll reduce your strength, or not strength. It will reduce your attacks or whatever. I think there's some sort of penalty for Power Fist in close combat, and we'll also make it only 1 wound, so people aren't taking it automatically. We want them taking power swords and stuff. If they're going to go mono a mono, but they didn't factor in that you might be going toe to toe with the Carnifex, and it slightly sort of defeats the object really. But it would have been had the internet been a thing then they probably would have corrected those things very swiftly, and the game would have been fantastic and endured.
I think as well, when you look at the difference between the what was the first one? Was it Space Wolves?
The first Codex.
Yeah.
Pass. I don't know.
The first Codex was. The first Codex for second ed was something really weird. I'm going to quickly look it up because I remember the difference in the codexes as that edition went on was something truly bizarre. First Codex for Warhammer 40k second ed. So no, that's Codex Imperialis. That's not what I'm after at all.
What do you mean? It was different. How was it different?
So,
what did you say?
Whilst the basic format never changed throughout the entirety of the codexes, there was a real change in how the game played. The first one was Ultramarines. Okay, Space Wolves was the third one. So when you get to Codex Ultramarines, because you mentioned that earlier on, and then later on you get Codex Tyranids, which was pretty much the last one for that edition, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
You've got 2 very different styles of play going on. Ultramarines, it's still very much attached to that rogue trader concept of playing. So everything that's built there is incredibly mutable. You can do all these different types of war gears, different types of loadouts. And then you get to Tyranids, and there's a much more laser precise focus on what you can and can't do with this army.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
it was
because
that you pay for your psychic powers in that
yeah.
book,
Oh
which is
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, absolutely. Rather than just being, you have a librarian. Here is a. Isn't it really weird that they're called librarians? Just before we carry on with that, because that's something that has messed with my head since day dot. Why are they called librarians? It's
They
ridiculous.
like books, the nerds. Magic people use books.
Yeah, they're the keepers of the law, and like the
Mm.
ultimate law are the hidden truths, and the hidden truths are the warp, and they're the only people that can be trusted to look after it. And
See,
I'm
that's a
sure
fancier version than what I said, which was they're just nerds. But that's a cool way to say it.
Isn't it just weird though? Like, you don't think about these things, but it's like they're called librarians. Just
well, I think they're drawing on a time when people were not. There would be fewer people who were literate, so they are the keepers of the knowledge.
yeah.
In the same way that the apothecary is kind of cut of the same cloth, but just in a kind of more pharmaceutical vein.
Are you suggesting that they don't actually have psychic powers? What they do is they open an old book, smell it, and then they invigorate their spirit that way to then shoot out the magic. Because everybody knows all books smell amazing, and it's just like a drug. It's like the spice.
It's just the words said the right way, and that's all it is.
they're just opening up a copy of like Lady Chatterley's Lover. I've got some powers now. Unfortunately, I'm now Sean Bean.
There's an Imperial Guard. Wingardia Leviosa. It's Leviosa.
What I really like about the Tyranid Codex is that every game forces you to tell a story.
Yeah.
Because this is interesting actually, because the game I played with Charlie last Tuesday, who's the guy who reached out to me when he recognised the post office in the video. I went round to his, and he had a dedicated hobby room with the table all set up, all green flock and trees and all the rest of it, just absolutely beautiful. And he had an Imperial Guard army, and both the Imperial Guard army and the Tyranid army, both the codexes of the time, they have pre-game effects. And the Imperial Guard one's very simple. It's a preliminary bombardment, where you basically get to place a battle cannon shot on the table and try and take out something big. And he very nearly one-shotted my Carnifex. But fortunately, I'd taken a voltage field and I passed my 4-up. So it was all good.
Is it just you given the explosion disc, you go and putting it here, and then you kind of just roll for it?
Yeah, I think I think it can scatter. I think I put it here. So it's a standard sort of kind of off-board artillery thing. So so you're very much role-playing the guard. We're doing preliminary bombardment. Here it comes.
Oh, that's great.
And that's just built. That's just baked in. But with the Tyranids, there's this fantastic process that you have to go through, which is very kind of RPG-esque. That every single unit in your opponent's army has to roll on a table, and it's either for a character, for a troop choice, or for a vehicle. And on a 1 to 3, nothing happens. But on a 4, 5, or 6, something will happen. From one called Jones is acting strangely, and on a roll of a 6 in the Tyranid player's turn, a barbed strangler basically bursts out of one of the troopers, and basically kills that unit instantly. And then the barbed strangler means that everyone else around it has to take a strength check, or they're killed as well. And it can immobilize tanks. And this is something which happened in like turn 4 of Charlie's game, and one of his last cannon crewmen just suddenly blew up, took out the crew next to it, and very nearly immobilized the Lehman Russ, which was sitting there. It was pretty bloody mess. Also to one called We're Surrounded, which meant that 2 of his... So obviously, there's only one thing that you can do against the 2nd edition Codex list, and that is like sit back and fire everything you have for all you're worth. But that's going to be made quite difficult when 2 of his troop choices were delayed because obviously they've been stalked by some sort of creature on the way, and they've had a terrible time getting to the front line. So the one of his guardsman squads arrived only on the 2nd turn with and on a 4-up, I think one of your troopers has gone mysteriously missing. I thought he was behind me. Oh no, he's gone. And the same thing happened with his big squad of Ogrins, which are like 55 points a model. They're not insignificant. And one of them mysteriously disappeared into the ether as well, and was late for the game. But yeah, on everything else, he passed. So nothing happened. On the vehicle table, it's possible that a little lurker has kind of encroached into the crew and sort of bursts out in a John Hurt-esque manner and wreaks havoc. So it's just really fun and really narrative, but it locks in every game with the Tyranids to, no, they're here now, you're screwed, this is a last stand. This is what the Tyranids do. There are billions of them. This is your last, there's acid rain falling and spores, and there are little worms wriggling underneath your skin. You're already dead, but can you hold back what's happening here? Like, they're terrifying in the lore, really scary. And they did a great job in terms of putting that narrative, albeit it's limited. It's just like, this is what's happening now, onto the tabletop.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Do you remember that that first proper battle report the Tyranids got in, I want to say, White Dwarf 189, and it was the Tyranids versus the Eldar and Imperial Guard coalition?
Yes, and they played Tyranid Attack, didn't they?
Yeah,
which is the one where they respawn. So Tyranid Attack is a mission which if the Tyranid player draws, then automatically the opponent just like, their mission is irrelevant now. They basically have to survive.
Yeah, they have to survive the waves.
Yeah, and a game of second edition would normally be 4 turns. But a game of but Tyranid Attack would be 6 turns, which would be mega, which would be a big old game. And I think the Imperials won because they had like a few people left, like 1 or 2 people hanging in there. Yeah. But the way that battle report was written, like, it really was tense, and it was horrific as well, wasn't it? Like the commissar was just watching people just get mown down.
It was just like watching Imperial Guardsmen being placed inside a grinder. It was just, oh well, there goes another one. It was it's one of those ones that really sticks in my mind as like the quintessential battle report. It's something. Battle reports these days in White Dwarf they're still good, but because technology has moved on, it now feels like you're looking at somebody's table. It doesn't feel like an actual battle report, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they were limited with what they could do. It was they had to take the photos much later on after like taking the Polaroids.
It's all in post.
Yeah, and then you had those beautiful little maps that showed everything moving around.
Yeah.
And you just don't get that kind of thing anymore, and it's kind of sad in a way that I understand technology's moved on, and with that, improvements in how things can look, but I always find modern day battle reports to feel a bit messy. They're not as concise.
Well, do you think that has to do with what you two guys have said about basically what was enjoyable about second edition as well? There's none of that weird randomness that could have just happened, and thus it feels a lot more clinical in a sense.
Absolutely, the shock attack gun. Let's get into the shock attack gun, because the Ork shock attack gun is the perfect example of what's different between what we'll call the modern era of 40k and the early years of 40k. Right now, the shock attack gun has one profile, right? In second ed 40k, it had a page and a half.
Yeah. I played against one the other day actually, and it's quite straightforward. I think you just find out like how much damage or how many shots I'm going to do, and then off we go from there. I think it definitely, it has some sort of snotling related thing that maybe ignores something, but you don't go down this ridiculous story, which you'd be there all day, wouldn't you? Because the shock cannon fires, and then you fire some buzzer squigs with your catapult, and then you fire your pulsar rocket, and then probably an hour and a half later, there's been like this novella which has been written about all the strange and wonderful things that have been occurring.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally understand why it doesn't do that anymore, but there is something about a page and a half of tables of where these snotlings have ended up inside a Grey Knight. It's great. I remember years and years ago taking out a full contingent of Deathwing Terminators, and it was just because they all got snotlings in the groin, and it
Oh
just
no!
instant death. Yeah, just. And you don't get that wonderful story as well of the snotlings being trained to jump through hoops and stuff, and they get little treats and everything, and like they see the hole open up from the shock attack, and then they're really happy, and they want to please the runt herder, and they all jump through, and then they just end up inside a dreadnought screaming. It's like, oh, you poor little things.
Yeah, I think all the whimsy has definitely been drawn out of 40k.
Yeah.
Have you listened to? Oh, there's someone who has a podcast where he reads old Hammer fiction.
I have seen him, yes, and I
It's
intend to get him on at some point.
it is excellent,
Yeah.
and the name escapes me right now. But not only are the readings fantastic, but what I also really appreciate is at the end he does a kind of 5-10 minute kind of critical review of the fiction. And what's great about it is like any good English teacher, he kind of frames it in the historicism of when it was written.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which story it was. I think it was one of the one in the Deathwing trilogy. The guy that wrote Space Marine and
Ian
wrote
Watson.
Ian
Yeah.
Watson, yeah, it's an Ian Watson one.
Alien Beast Within, starring Melinda the Assassin. Yep.
So he's just done that. That's the latest one he did, and it's 2 hours long. And it's bloody well read and well written. There's nothing better than injecting polymorph what's it called into a patriarch, and the description of the patriarch basically just shitting itself out of itself is like nightmare fuel.
I remember reading that
great.
one for our YouTube channel. I did the entirety of Deathwing a couple of years back.
Oh, brilliant!
And I distinctly remember having the amount of editing work I had to do on Alien Beast Within, because Ian Watson's prose is unlike anything else I've ever come across.
It's stream of consciousness stuff,
yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah. But the way he phrases stuff, your tongue can't move fast enough to get from one bizarre word to the next, and you the amount of like offcuts I've got that are just me going bleh, and just getting really upset with myself because like, why can I not say this sentence? And the reason being is that there's like 4 really old words that you've never heard spoken in real life before, and it's Watson's great.
So,
I love Ian Watson.
Yeah, he's great, and actually, I know that he's sort of kind of derided a bit for his horniness, which I think is a whole other conversation. But it's kind of weirdly refreshing to read something well written that does actually contain a part of humanity which is so just edited out and is just sort of missing. Yeah, I mean, not to say he necessarily does it in a very like realistic or perhaps empathetic way, but there's something kind of almost like confusing about seeing it there when actually it's like, well, no, it's an early work. Like, if anything, it was there and then got taken out.
Oh, absolutely. Did you ever see the redone Deathwing book? Where they re-released it about 2002, and the editors went into it with a bloody hatchet.
Yeah. I think that's the first time I read The Alien Within, actually.
Yeah.
Was in that. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, you're missing huge. Well, you would have been missing huge chunks of the story because it gets that one gets hatcheted. The is it Voice in the Stars gets really freaking hatcheted because it takes all the squats out.
Yeah. So the Voice in the Stars, is that the one with the teenage boy who hears the voices and then he goes, yeah. So that's the one that I was originally trying to describe when I
right.
So and what this guy pointed out in his kind of criticism of it at the end was that the Space Marines in Rogue Trader are presented in a sort of kind of like absurd way, that they're that they are part of this death cult and Ian Watson also makes them completely absurd in his novel Space Marine. Like they are
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like he really leans into the kind of fraternal, what happens when fraternities exist, and maybe this fraternity's been around for 10,000 years. Like, what would that be like? And it's just all kind of vulgar. But anyway, he talks about the Womble helmets, that they sort of look whimsical and daft. That
Yeah, they do.
In the art, they spend just as much time beating on the local population as they do like killing aliens. The front cover of Rogue Trader is them getting slaughtered, and he sort of says, the very fact that they're called Marines is because probably in the combined consciousness of the West at the time, Marines meant US Marines, Marines meant Vietnam, and Marines in Vietnam, and going back as well in the Pacific War, it meant death and pointlessness and futility and horror. And so that's where the Space Marine comes from. And it's this sort of profoundly 80s anti-war, futile, silly, aren't these guys idiots? There's something kind of terrifying and sad about it all.
Well, a big chunk of the Space Marines, as they were created in Rogue Trader, was, and it's why they're called Space Marines, is as a antithesis to Robert Heinlein, who was very gung ho. And I'm going to put my big flag down in the hill here and say, Starship Troopers is a better film than book, because that book is unreadable. It is absolute knackers, and I don't care who hears me say it. It's not good. And it's concerning, some of the stuff that comes out in that book. But anyhow, so Heinlein created the entire Starship Troopers thing, and they are the best of the best. They are completely American military propaganda, especially like, as you say there, the Vietnam War. That is how they were being portrayed and how they were being advertised. Join the army, be the best of the best, be better than your neighbor. And that's taken to the nth degree with Rogue Trader, where it's, you're not just the best of the best, we genetically enhance you to be even better. Yeah, it is very much a response and parody of Heinlein. And I'm sure Rick Priestley has talked about it at some length somewhere, but I couldn't tell you where I saw that at.
Yeah. And whilst that's no longer there in second edition, it's kind of being removed, it is still present elsewhere in the lore, as it were, like in the background.
The echoes are still there.
Yeah, the echoes are still there. And in the tabletop, it's still there. And even though the Marines might take themselves very seriously, they're going to get groin-shotted by a snotling. It's that sort of... that's still kind of there. Whereas I think what's quite challenging now is that there is this... Games Workshop have tied themselves up in knots, because 40k is such a serious universe now. It takes itself incredibly seriously. And there are all sorts of kind of toxic, fascist, messed up tropes. Everyone's a bad guy. There's no kind of relief or humor amongst any of it now. Whereas second edition, we were being told that it was grim and it was awful, and it was. But at the same time, there was this sort of wry humor filtered throughout the whole thing.
Absolutely. I mean, just sticking with Ian Watson, the Inquisitor trilogy, you read that and it is a grim, relentless trudge through hellscapes. But it's also got things like generations of families queuing up, and they're giving birth, and the next generation is raised in the queue, and they must live in the queue. And it's just like, what the hell is this on about? This is ridiculous. But that is taking the scope of 40k and running with it, whilst not thinking about the logistics of how to run it day to day. And once you start putting in logistics, you do lose a lot of that sense of fun. I mean, that's not to say there isn't funny things in 40k now. There is still there is a sense of humor, but it's a lot absurd, and it's not as front and center.
Do you think that's why the Orcs have this weird kind of floaty, not threat part in 40k at the moment? Because it doesn't feel like they ever know what to do with the Orcs. The Orcs always feel like, to me, a stepping stone for something more dangerous. Like whenever I see the Orcs portrayed, they are being manipulated by chaos, or they're a prelude to something else that's more dangerous coming along the line, because they can do a more interesting story with someone else versus the Orcs, who are just the dumb one. But they're not allowed to be the fun dumb one anymore. They're just mean and angry.
I mean, it depends on what you're looking at. The codex for the Orcs for the last few editions has been. It tries to have a sense of silly, but it's so built into the universe that it doesn't quite run. But then you get something like Brutal Cunning, which is an amazing book where you get to see the Imperium from an Orc's point of view, and an Orc thinks that the Imperium is insane. Like,
do you think it's easy to do that in a novel because you don't need to tie it into the game system? They can just make them what they were kind of meant to be, more so than what they have to be for the tabletop now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've said for a while now that the way to fix that is that you start the Warg, which is Gazgrul collecting all the Orcs to go and kick the shit out of Angron. Because you get that sense of real silliness from him just going, "You did what to Yarok? Nah." And then going off and killing Angron. And I think you can get a lot of play out of that, really tying in just, well, these guys are ridiculous. By human standards, these Orcs are insane and silly, and they may be massive, bulky, muscled monsters, but in the middle of their brain, they're just weird, and you cannot in any way understand the Orc. And a lot of that, I think, comes down to when you see Orcs on the battlefield now, they're green and black. And that's kind of like, meh. When you go back to the glory days of Orcs, there was a hue of multicolored different factions all running alongside each other, and they looked incredible. It looked catastrophic. It was a carnival on your eyes. Whilst now, as I say, it's red, black, and green, and that's
in second edition. There really is only one clan though, and that's the Bad Moons.
Oh god,
because
got motif.
Great motif, but also second edition Orcs they're a shooting army really.
Yeah.
Wow,
they're not.
That's really opposite of what they are now, right? Because Orcs are meant to be terrible at shooting now. I think
they're not. They're not tough, and they're not strong. I mean, they're stronger than they are tough, basically. So it's almost like the Orcs, of all the factions since second edition, I would argue that the Orcs have changed the most in terms of like their sort of raison d'etre, and also their appearance on the tabletop, and also like what they do on the tabletop as well. How they function. They are. They were very much a horde army by design. They were supposed to be kind of anarchic. They were there to kind of overwhelm. They were not great in close combat. They had specialists and things, but they were basically supposed to be a bit of a laugh. They are slow. Everything in second edition is slow, really. Your average infantryman has a 4-inch move characteristic. I think squats have 3. I think Eldar Guardians have like a 5-inch one. Genestealers have a 6-inch, and in today's 40k, like everyone has 6 inches, so you can zoom around.
I'm not saying a comment on that one.
So considering that there are only 4 turns in the game. One of the things that everyone talks about second edition is close combat takes forever. Well, the reality is that you're only really going to have close combat in 1, maybe 2 turns anyway. Whereas I played a game of 10th the other day, and we had a close combat phase every turn of the 5 turns we played.
Yeah.
We were straight in with the Gene Stealer, straight in with everything else. So, and what was his name? Adrian
Smith.
Adrian Smith is an artist. Was there another Adrian Smith who was the Orc player?
Yeah. Are you thinking of Paul Sawyer? Because he was like the big Orc player back in that day.
But he was called Aid, wasn't he? Or Adrian? And he had glasses and was always gurning at the camera, and he would always very much be really into playing orcs.
That was Paul Sawyer, wasn't it? Hang on. Hey. Let me just make sure I'm not lying to you. And he had the glasses, bald head.
Yeah. No, he wasn't bald.
Okay.
And he commanded the orcs at Orks Drift, the Zulu game.
Oh, Andy Chambers. Because Andy Chambers was at Orks Drift, wasn't? Hang on. I'm going to just quickly open my archive of White Dwarfs and let's see what I can find.
His name is Adrian, I think.
Okay.
Adrian, Orc player. Okay, 2nd edition.
Adrian Wood.
Yes,
Jesus, right. Okay. Yeah, that's right. He was the one who made all the crazy orc buildings that were like super Mexican.
But so he lost. Like if you read any White Dwarf battle report from 2nd edition era, he loses every game. He just gets gunned down. Like they just advance forward and then they just get hosed. Because in 2nd edition you want lots of you want bikes, you want buggies, and you want lots and lots of big guns because the orcs are a shooting army. That's what they're all about. And you want to take Bad Moons because Bad Moons can take more special weapons in their squad. The Goths are terrible. Like their special thing is that they have Scar Boys, which are orcs who have like a better weapon skill. And if you're not going to get into close combat, whereas the Bad Moons also get the mega armored knobs, who are basically Terminators. Who can take plasma guns, melter guns. They're amazing. They're kind of unstoppable. They're just such a different kettle of fish and kind of far more interesting and thematic than what we've got now, really. Yeah. But I mean, what I would say is that I play 10th edition. I am nostalgic for 2nd edition. I realise that it's not the perfect game. It's a long way off the perfect game, but it's an awful lot of fun. It's a callback to a 40k, which I grew up with, which got me into it, which was sort of my vision of it at the time. And now in the serious world that we live in is more my vision of what I prefer it to be. I also like the way that the universe in 40k is both smaller and bigger at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's much less laid down, but that means that there's so much more to kind of experiment and play with. I also like the way that they weren't kind of on a crusade to move the timeline forward. The whole point of the 40k universe, to me, is that time has already happened. That was the last 10,000 years. Everything that is going to happen has happened. Everything now is in a state of perpetual decay and decline. There's no point advancing the storyline forward because it will just be things getting worse. And that's what I thought was kind of slightly annoying that James Workshop? Yes, James Workshop took that away with all the Primaris. And I know that there was the Benedictum and all this kind of thing, but you couldn't help feeling that you've brought back a Primarch, you've brought back several Primarchs now. Like that was just a myth. That was a dream. Like it was a lie. That was never going to happen. Like it isn't. This isn't Sigmar. This isn't Warhammer the Old World. That does not happen in 40k. It's something which you've basically released miniatures and progressed the storyline but at the same time, you're living this lie, which the everyday people in the 40k universe would be living every day. That's what makes it so hopeless, is they all think that this is going to happen, and then you've made it happen. They think that the Space Marines are their saviors. They're not. The Space Marines are. They're all falling apart. There are very few of them. They're spread thin. The Tyranids come along. You lose a few more chapters. They can't be replaced. The ones that have been there since the beginning have genetic deficiencies and faults, and actually they're monsters themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it so cool. And now you've brought them back, and they're bigger, and they're more perfect, and they're wonderful. And fair enough, maybe writers like EDB will come along and try to claw that back and grimdarkify it with great books like Spear of the Emperor. Kind of make, he actually sort of legitimizes. He does what he can to legitimize this fact, but it really takes away from this the fact that the 40k universe was in a state of stasis in second edition, and they're like, this is the stasis, this is the situation, now play with it, let's do it. Whereas now, like as you say, Andy, you're like, well, what do they do? What do we do with the Orks? And it's like, well, if we're in a state of stasis and decline, then they, along with every other Xenos race, will continue to gnaw away at the apple, which is mankind, and then and then that'll be it. It will fade away to nothing, and then they won't exist anymore. Whereas now it's like, well, does that mean that in 11th or 12th edition they need to be elevated to be the big bad? Because Chaos has had their turn, now it's Tyranid's turn, and they'll just have like a revolving door of all of these threats.
I mean, from a business point of view, probably. Unfortunately, that's probably how it goes.
Well, I think it's one of the important things to think there as well, that the Games Workshop that created Second Ed 40k is not the Games Workshop that created 10th Ed 40k. They are two incredibly different entities with very different mindsets. For all intents and purposes, the guys who were running Games Workshop back in like the early 90s, they were creating knockabouts. That's what they were doing. They were creating miniatures to sell for people to have knockabouts with, and that's what 40k is. Rogue Trader was there to be a tabletop RPG with mass combat. Second edition was built to be a knockabout. Third edition is the beginnings of a business emerging, which it had to become a business in order to survive. Which it's one of those horrible facts, unfortunately, that the group of guys having a great time and having these big knockabouts, they were probably still having a great time. From the sounds of it, a lot of them were having a great time right up until like 4th and 5th. But the business itself had to become paramount to everything else in order to be able to survive, especially when you start looking at like the various economic crashes that have taken place since 40k first started. And with that,
and there was also the fear of the video game as well. They really didn't think that they'd make it into the 2000s because of video games.
No, well, never forget, Games Workshop very nearly went bust in the early 2000s. They came within a hair's breadth of becoming bankrupt. And how they survived that is still like a bloody mystery, because it's like,
I think there's a lot of luck involved, isn't there?
Big
things
time,
like Dawn of War coming along. I think that definitely played a big part. I would also, just to reverse a little bit, I'd say that my quibbles about where the lore has gone and things like that, they are, they're very small. They're very much kind of like, I would prefer it ifs, rather than me going out into the lawn and burning my 2,000 point Ultramarine army in a bin. So if I could, can I put it on you guys? Like, if there was anything you could change, if there's something small you could change about the 40k lore, what would you do?
I would probably get things like Gorka Morka running again, which I know that sounds like a really weird thing to say lore-wise, but I do firmly believe that the Orks need to be front and center as the main bad guys of the piece, so to speak.
For something. I mean, it doesn't feel like they can be in 40k. So I mean, Necromunda's coming to an end. Gorkamorka could kind of fill a
or
sort
is
of
it?
role.
Is it? Because they've just announced
Well.
new miniatures for Necromunda. So at
Who
this point in
knows,
time,
right?
I'm throwing my arms in the air and just going, I give up. I give up trying to even second guess any of this shit. It's we did a nice little farewell to Necromunda on the last episode, and all of a sudden it went, oh no, here's some new minis. And you know what? Those minis are ace. That little freaking robot with a little miner's hat. Beautiful. I want
They heard the show
17
again.
of them.
That was it. Then when Fluffenhammer says it's over, fuck them.
But the reason I say that is that the Tyranids, I'm glad they're getting a lot of screen time at the moment.
Yeah.
But they are they're the last wave before the universe blinks out. Chaos needs to be sparing. Chaos can't just be chaos, because it kind of lessens chaos, if that makes sense. The Orks, however, are numerous and they don't stop. And when the last human dies, it'll be because an Orc's boot is on his throat. Because that's what Orcs do. They are innumerable. In the same way that the Skaven in Fantasy Battle will be they were the final race to survive. Because they kept winning because they were everywhere. And once
there's this great piece of art in the 5th edition war book, whatever the Warhammer was called, and it's basically an illustration of a human city, and then underneath it, and oh my god, it's just tunnels and more. It's so cool. And apparently, isn't there some ridiculous piece of lore you're never more than 10 meters away from a Skaven in any Empire city? It's so cool. So if I had to collect, if I was to collect Warhammer, I would absolutely collect Skaven. I'm fully on board for square base Skaven.
I mean, no, square base. I will. Yeah, absolutely. On square bases, you can kind of get away with those fucking clan rats.
I heard you guys talking about that last time. You're right, and I painted loads of clan rats for my mate James because he has a big dwarf square base army and a Skaven one too, which he actually, James was the guy in the Tyranid video who helped me batch paint the Nids.
Oh, right.
Then about a week later, I returned the favour and batch painted a load of clan rats. And
was it clan rats or plague monks? I thought it was plague monks.
It was both actually.
Oh, it was both. Okay.
There were a couple of sessions, but you're right. I mean, individually, they're no great shakes, and they don't look very good on round bases. But ranked up.
Oh, great! Yeah, they look absolutely fantastic on the ranked up square bases. But that's what they were designed to do, and that's. I've gone on about this far too many times recently, but it's why I haven't got a Skaven army. My beloved Skaven, my first love of Warhammer. I haven't got one for an Age of Sigmar army because I cannot do that with the clan rats. I can't put myself. I cannot do 30 of those things going onto round bases. I just can't.
Didn't you have more than 30? Is it only 30? I thought you had more.
Oh god, you can get 60. 60 in a unit easily. But I was just averaging out, I just can't do it. I can't move that many. I can't paint that many.
Even speed. Do you think speed paints would help if you did that? Just to slop through them quick?
Yeah, but they're still monopose.
Yeah, it still takes forever. I mean, you get this idea in your head. You're like, oh yeah, I'll do it this way. You can plan it all out and everything. But as soon as you start going, you're like, oh, actually, that colour's an hour. Other colours an hour, and plus, and then there'll be mistakes, and then you have to go back over, and then and it all adds up, and you just need a friend. You need a good friend to be there with you, to hold your hand and help you.
But what you're saying is I should buy 140 Skaven and go around to Andy's house with a big smile on my face.
Yeah, completely unannounced.
Oh, it would be nice to see you, so I'd be happy to do that.
Well, actually, it's been a while since we've hung out. I'll have to do that sometime.
Don't feel guilty. You've got stuff to do. That's fine.
Oh, no, I don't feel guilty. Just more like,
oh, maybe you should.
Yeah. Last time I saw you, my 3-year-old was throwing up everywhere. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good times. Yeah.
But no, that's To answer your question, that would be my my answer is that the orcs get front and centered a bit more. That they get to do something, but also I think the weirdest parts of 40k need to be brought back. Like Blackstone Fortress did a really good job of bringing back some of the really eccentric parts of 40k.
Yeah, I had a good time with that. I had a really good time with that.
Yeah,
good,
absolutely great. And I think it would be. Oh yeah, I think. Well, didn't we play it on my my stag do?
We played like one level of it, and that's all we got through, unfortunately. But it was pretty fun. I liked how it looked. Everything was great on it.
Yeah, that's right. Because me and Glenn were dying on the sofa.
That's right.
Yeah. Good thing I'm teetotal now. Yeah, I think a lot of that weirdness needs to kind of come back as well. But that is my personal thing, and I'm very aware that somebody who's been into 40k for 5-10 years is probably going to look at the things that I'm thinking about and just going, "What the hell is this?"
Because do you remember at like the beginning of 9th, we got that image of like all these weird Xeno races, and we were like speculating, "Oh, what are they going to do? Are they going to do these things as their own army, individual armies?" And nothing ever came of it.
No.
Nothing at all. It's like they were really interesting designs as well.
Nothing. Are you talking about there's that piece of art in the 9th edition rulebook with all the sort of the threats from within and
that's the one.
Threats from without. Yeah, there's some horrifying shit on there, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
The enslavers are really.
Yeah.
So I was writing over lockdown. I ran a Deathwatch RPG game, which is badass. It was a good time. It was seriously cool. And I started writing like a follow-up, which is kind of in the bank, but it involves the enslavers and the Gene Stealer cult, and the enslavers enslaving a patriarch, and various ne'er-do-wells like involved in trying to make that happen, probably slightly a la Alien Resurrection, and a Deathwatch kill team having to go in and sort it out. But in the first mission in the sort of first hour of the game, all the players are given their Space Marines, and then they're thrown into action immediately, and then kind of by the end of the session they're all dead, and that's basically the intel that the player characters pick up on from the beginning, so that they are sort of going in after that team, as it were. So they live a little bit of those teams, of that Deathwatch team. They all get killed by this mysterious entity, and then they go in again just to kind of build the dread and suspense. Because I think it's quite a good way of mitigating the slight kind of I'm invulnerable feeling of being a Space Marine in Deathwatch.
Oh man, that's a really cool way of doing it. I've only ever played one game of Deathwatch, and there was a guy who was playing. Oh, sorry, it wasn't Deathwatch. It was the other one. It was Wrath and Glory.
Okay, yeah.
Was it Wrath and Glory? Must have been. There was a guy playing a Blood Angel, and he had a voice modulator with him. So every time he spoke through the voice modulator in a really theatrically over the top. It's like, "By the blood of my prize father, Sanguinius, I do not believe what mine eyes see." And it's all coming through this voice modulator that's really loud, really crackly and distorted. And,
that's strong commitment.
It was so good.
It sounds like this really stupid idea I had, because I thought like in the future when I'm able to go out and see people and play games, I was thinking like taking a boombox with me and pressing a button for my turn to have the OTS for the Imperial Guard Dawn of War theme going for my turn. And each time I select a unit, I'd press like a little button and it'd go Imperial Guard ready for battle, depending on the kind of unit. And I could just imagine this look of just pure like confusion on the point of my opponent's face, just being, "What's he doing?"
You can go one better than that, mate. Right?
Huh?
And what you do is, your tanks, your Lehman Russes and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Right. So you cut out a hole in the bottom and a little tiny hole at the back, and you put a Bluetooth speaker in it. Right. And then with a little like Bluetooth controller, you just start playing the music coming from the tanks.
If I was really cool, I would. If I knew how to do it, motorize the treads, like that one dude who got his Ork buggy and made it an RC car.
Yeah.
So cool.
Or you
There's a-
could have it so that every time you point to one of your units, it like activates, like in Red Alert. Like, ready to move. On the way.
What you could do is get perspex bases, right? So you paint the top of it with the rubble and everything, and you leave the outside base clear, and then you have little LED lights, so it just looks like they're ringed when you select them.
Somebody sent me. It's quite a simple thing, but on a Space Hulk board, someone had like little red LEDs when the door was
What edition?
closed. What edition of Space Hulk?
Yeah. It's
Oh
important.
well, I don't know. I don't know because it was like a custom board.
Oh.
But when they lifted the door up, obviously it broke the circuit, and then the LED light went green. And it's such a small thing, but very pleasing.
That's very cool.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'm very aware that this would be very easy for us all to keep talking till about 2:00 in the morning.
Which is very ill advised. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm aware that time is starting to get quite late on. So I'm going to start bringing things to a close with a series of quick-fire questions for you there. Are you ready, Mr. Ed?
Fire away.
First of all, thoughts on striking scorpions, and do they have a place in modern 40k?
Yes. But do you want some thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts.
They look really cool. They're green. They have awesome chainswords. They have the coolest chainswords in 40k. They've got mandible blasters, and also they hold a very special place in my heart in second edition. So yes, they absolutely belong in 40k.
So with all that being said, when do we get a Warhammer 40,000 painting second Ed striking scorpions on your YouTube channel?
Well, a good friend of mine's sister just came back from Canada, where all of his childhood 40k stuff is, and there's going to be a dead drop in a couple of days, and I believe that there are some OG striking scorpions in there, so that's not
nice.
out of the question.
God,
it could happen.
God damn, I was going for the most quintessential second Ed stuff that you haven't covered, and god damn.
Yeah, there's a whole heap of Eldar stuff. Some of it reasonably rare, so yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Prof, you might have some of those really new warp spiders that they're still using.
Oh, I sure hope so. I think they still hold up. I mean, the Eldar stuff, of all of the ranges of that era, I think the Eldar stuff holds up. Because it has to as well, because that's what it is. That's what it still is, a lot of it.
Yeah. Oh, aye. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't exactly get a whole new unit of Dark Reapers these days, do you?
And you should, though. Do you remember the general that they did? Was that general? The
Yeah,
leader?
Mugen Ra. Yeah.
Yeah, he was great.
He was.
I don't like Eldar, but he was really nice.
The new one's nice, but it just lacks that sheer brass balls of the original.
No, he's just like Skullman, isn't he? He's straight out of a. I'm not good enough to name comic book artists, but he looks like one of those guys. One of
He
those
looks
90s
like
comic book dudes.
If Todd
Something like
McFarlane.
Spawn.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Todd McFarlane had redesigned Skeletor, that's what Mugen Ra would have looked like.
That's why I like it.
Yeah, he's absolutely nails.
A 1993 Image Comics redo of He-Man, and it's just Skeletor turning up in his armor. Do you like my new look, He-Man? You bumbling boob.
Sorry,
lost my train of thought. Yeah, quick fire. Yeah, that works, doesn't it?
Slow reload.
Gazgul Thraka. First version, second version, or third version?
Ooh.
First version.
So the pre-actual miniature, the conversion version.
Yeah, nice. It's good knowledge. Second version in that case, because then there would be 4 versions, wouldn't there?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, but I actually forgot there was a brand new one out. That I say brand new. It's like 2 years.
Second version. But having said that, the second version, where in like the first battle report they ran with him, he wasn't named as Gazgul. So I don't know if the second version was even necessarily Gazgul. You know,
he was named Gazgul in the battle report, but he wasn't. It wasn't like it said in the army list, army leader Gazgul Thraka. It was in the little bit of blurb that went with it.
Okay.
So that's where Gazgul Thraka comes from.
Good.
True or false? Gastrel Thracker is an anagram of Margaret Thatcher.
I don't know about. Well, no, it couldn't be an anagram because there's no Z in Margaret Thatcher.
No, there isn't. There isn't. It's one of those weird little bits of law that's kind of come out over the years.
Yeah, I mean, it is a
true.
parody of though Mag Orak. Yeah. Not an anagram.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things. I keep seeing people say that it's an anagram and just looking at it going, what the shit? You are in a battlefield. The battlefield is 17 dreadnoughts on each side. The battlefield is full of nothing but cactus spikes. You have in the very center a piece of terrain of your choosing. What do you put into the center of that terrain?
A fire base.
And finally, a warp storm opens up in the middle of a battle between some Blood Angels and Tyranids. An army from Warhammer Fantasy Battle steps through. What do you pick as that army?
You mean for him to fight?
Say again?
Do you mean for him to fight?
No, well, yeah, it's going to be a three-way battle from this point on.
I think it would have to be like vampire counts.
Oh,
Because then it would be like, oh, they're the baddies, but they're kind of Blood Angels. So it could be an interesting interaction there.
Okay.
Yeah. And it would look good because it would be all black and red as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
an army of the undead come through and battle the Tyranids with the Blood Angels.
I like it. I like your thing. And bonus round, favorite mark of armor, of Space Marine armor.
So until recently, I would have said Mark 6. I've always loved Mark 6, the beaky one.
Yeah.
But I think it's Mark 7.
Okay.
No, I think I used to not like it when it was so ubiquitous, but I do like that muzzle helm. I think it's like that is a symbol in of itself now. You know, that helmet is an icon of the Space Marines in itself. It looks nails. It's a cool piece of design, and you see it everywhere on every other model. They try for every other race, they try and do it in another way, but it's never be as iconic as on a Space Marine. I like it. No.
And the correct answer, of course, was the errant armor.
Yeah, I do like the errant armor. Speaking of which, I have just this evening released a new video in which I paint some errant armor. So you should have a look at that.
I shall probably watch. I was going to say I'll watch that one in bed tonight, but that was probably far too much information for you. So, with all that being said, Ed, can you tell people where they can find you if they so wish to discover your colourful glory in all of its, colourful glory?
I certainly can. I am Minisodes on YouTube, and you might get something from Breaking Bad if you were just to type Minisodes in. But if you type in Minisodes 40k or Minisodes 2nd edition or anything Warhammer related, you'll probably find the channel. I also am on Instagram as I think I'm Minisodes_Ed. I'm sure if you type something to the search, it will come up, and that's me on social media. But give my videos a look if you like Minisodes. No, not Minisodes. If you like Warhammer 2nd edition and you like kind of retro 40k and all that kind of thing, then do give it a look.
Excellent stuff. And of course, Andy, it's your turn now. Where can people find you if they wanted to find your rotten, decaying corpse as it slowly slides out of the capillary capsules you're kept in?
Usual places, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube is Decayed Andy, Rotten Corpse of a Person, not 10-year period, don't make that mistake. And on the Moonbase 2 podcast every Sunday where me and Mikey talk about Transformers, if you want.
Excellent stuff. As for me, obviously, you can find the Fluffenhammer on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search for the Fluffenhammer. Amazing that. You can find my personal stuff at adnicol.weebly.com, which is where all of the non-40k and fantasy battle stuff I do goes, which, granted, is not as much because time is not my friend and age creeps upon me like an old dog. And outside of all of those things, what's coming up? You'll be all happy to know that I have begun work on the Dawnbringer Chronicles because I'm a glutton for punishment.
Oh no.
It begins again. Honestly, when the the new version of 40k came out and there was no short stories went with it, I was like, it's over. But no, now there's the weekly short stories back up on the Warhammer community site, and so as I have done for every other version of this that they've released, I have begun the readings. They should be starting next week, whilst the end of this week finishes off the Feast of Bones series. All that being said, we're going to get out of here. Thank you very much for listening, if indeed you still are. Thank you very much for Ed for giving us his time this evening to wax lyrical about times long gone.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's been awesome.
And of course, thank you to Andy for propping me up and making sure I don't fall asleep, because I'm a very old and tired man.
I'm a good bit of wood, I guess.
That's what it says in your CV. Good for wood.
Bit of wood, yeah.
Just good for wood. I'm going to make that into a t-shirt. Thank you very much for listening, everyone out there. Hope you have a good night. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.